got into the habit of giving each other a salute. Once he'd cycled off, Opie stopped by a brick wall and waited a moment. She checked her watch. This friend was always late. Finally, a gigantic tabby cat with furry tufts on the end of her ears emerged from a bush and strolled towards Opie, yawning and scattering dry mud. A collar around her neck announced in swirling letters that you were in the presence of Margot von Catten. Lucky you. Come on, I'm going to be late, Opie said. Margot never hurried. She hopped up onto the wall and inspected Opie's hands, checking they were perfectly clean before she allowed her head to be scratched. Once Margot got bored of her, Opie carried on to school, the sun already hot on the top of her head. She walked down a street dominated by large buildings that gave her some shade and trotted past the Varling Cinema, the Varling Supermarket, and the Varling Bowling Alley. Soon she reached the St. Francis of Assisi school gates. Opie stood in front of her school and sighed. Even being near her school made her feel anxious and shy. Opie had joined the school a year ago, when they'd moved to be near the studio for Highland Docks. She was a little quiet in her first week at school. Most people would have been. It was perfectly understandable. But on the Thursday of that first week, a boy called Killian Keogh had embarrassed her in front of the whole class by saying, "You're really quiet. Is it because you're shy, or are you too clever to talk to us?" Everyone stared at her as Opie blushed a hot red. "Oh, okay," Killian said, pointing at her like she was a science experiment. "Shy." Killian was an Irish boy with a sweet face that did not reflect his personality. Opie had disliked him from that moment. And when, a week later, he started calling her dopey, her dislike hardened into hate. Thanks to Killian, her classmates were now convinced she was shy and left her alone. She felt like she had a big sign on her head that said, "Shy! Don't talk to me, please! Shy!" Only one person talked to her. Killian's best friend, Jackson Sato. Jackson was special. He was tall and half Japanese with dark hair and grey eyes. He was also funny, cool and cheeky. Jackson seemed to glide through life on charm and bending the rules. He never listened properly to anyone, so was unaware of the "Opie is shy" message. He couldn't have been more different to Opie, who was hard-working and serious and never bent the rules. She was small and solid, hidden behind long dark hair with a fringe to her nose. Jackson only chatted to Opie when they were at their lockers, which were next to each other. But at the beginning of term, Killian came down with mumps. Opie wouldn't wish mumps on anyone, but it did mean Killian was off school. She had sat at the back of the class and watched a bored and lonely Jackson fiddle with his hair. At break time, she'd wandered over and offered him a crisp. They'd started chatting about his dad's failed attempts to grow potatoes, which had led to the family eating an uncomfortable amount of turnips. This had really made her laugh. As the days passed, they became friends. Jackson was skilled at making people feel good about themselves. He was never shy about complimenting your brains or shoes or anything in between. Jackson gave Opie confidence, and Opie helped Jackson with his schoolwork. Okay, fine. She did his schoolwork for him, but it was just quicker that way. Every morning, Opie anxiously watched the classroom door, expecting Killian to come in and reclaim his friend. But he was off all week. On Monday morning, Opie had bounced into school and stopped dead in the classroom doorway, seeing Killian and Jackson in their usual seats. But Jackson had spotted her and pulled a chair towards their desks. They had been an awkward three ever since. Two frenemies fighting over one charismatic boy. This was the first problem in Opie Jones's life. The second problem